In Lab 5, we will be looking at how to create buffers and how to erase features from one shapefile out of another shapefile. So to demonstrate that, we are going to create a harvest unit around this large group of trees here in the middle of our map. It's going to be an imaginary cut unit where we're going to go where we'd say we would be going in and cutting these trees out. And then we're going to create a buffer around the West Fork of Millicoma here, which is this stretch of river. And we're going to say within a certain distance of the river, we will not be able to cut trees. So we'll initially digitize what will be our harvest unit around this group of trees. We'll create our buffer, and then we'll erase that buffer from this harvest unit. So to get started, we want to go in and we want to create our harvest unit shapefile. In order to do that, we want to go and we want to open up Art Catalog, and we want to go to where our Lab 5 is located. We'll right click on that. We go to New, and we go down to Shapefile. We're going to call this Harvest Unit. We're going to make it a polygon file. And for our coordinate systems, we're going to actually import our coordinate systems from our stream file. So to do that, you go to Edit, you click up here, you say Import, and then you choose the file that you're importing from. In this case, our STW streams. We say Add, and that brings in this information, saying OK. And then we say OK. This will create a shapefile over here on the side. Since nothing is in that shapefile yet, it doesn't show anything on the map. Now what we're going to do for this shapefile is we're going to actually start editor and we're going to draw in this file. But before we do that, let's go in here and let's change this to a hollow unit, and we will give it a slightly garish bright color to look at and give it a 0.2. Part of the reason why we're doing that is that when we're digitizing, this will help make it so that as we overlap our points when we're digitizing, it makes it a little easier to see. So we go Editor, we'll start editing. We want to choose Harvest Unit. We say OK, and we say Continue. And then we can close Catalog over here to make this, give us a little bit more room. But now we want to open up this Create Features here. We want to choose Harvest Unit, and we want to choose Polygon down here, right? And then right now we have this straight segment picked, which is fine. That's what we're going to do. And because we're drawing a polygon, each time we click, it's going to be a new vertex on or vertices on that polygon. So we'll start over here, and keep in mind as you're doing this, the more points you make, the smoother your feature will be. And we just want to follow along all of the large trees along this cut unit. And some of this is a little subjective because some of you might look at this and be like, all right, well, you know, I chose my cut area slightly different. That's fine. In this case, you know, some of this is just a little bit of eyeballing, especially if you're picking out bigger trees using satellite imagery. You know, it's not as cut and dry as, say, the edges of a clear cut, which tend to be pretty obvious. All right, so that was a very quick version, but that's what we've got here. I must have clicked a third time. Just fine. We can go up here and we say edit or stop editing. We'll say yes. All right, now if you wanted to change something here, like if you weren't happy with this, you can start editing again. And we'll say okay, and continue. And then in here, if you choose this edit tool, you can come down here and you can double click on this line and you can see that now all of your vertices are now visible. You can take them and you can move them around, just like we did in the previous lab where we were changing how the roads looked and things like that. You can also actually add in vertex by right-clicking on the line and insert vertex. So if you need to edit how this shape looks, that's how you do that. But we're going to go back in. We're going to stop editing. Now we want to go to our harvest unit, and we want to actually add in a field for our area. So we're going to go in here. We're going to add a field. We're going to call it area. We want to make it a long integer. And we want to give it a precision of 4. We'll say OK. And then we want to go over here and we want to right click on that, calculate geometry, say yes. And I want to make this acres. So we have area, we have an acres. If you did this already and you did it in square feet or square meters or whatever, it's not the end of the world. I'm gonna do it in acres. We'll say OK, and we'll say yes. And there we go. And showing that our area now of that cut unit is 75 acres. All right. So now our next step is we want to make a buffer around this stream that shows the distance away from the stream that we're not going to be able to cut. And this is done in order to protect the streams. They put distances around the streams where you can't have you can't harvest trees, or you can't build roads, you can't build houses. It's for a water quality issue. If you're cutting right up to the stream, you get a lot of sediment load into the stream. If you have a road right next to the stream, sometimes you get higher sediment load. Also, when you cut down the trees right next to the stream, you get a lot more sunlight hitting the water, and the water heats up, and higher water temperatures are known to cause smaller fish sizes, actual fish mortalities, increase algae growth, a lot of things like that. So this is done as a means of protecting water quality, and the state, federal, tribes, a lot of different agencies will have different buffer widths that they're going to use, which is why you might be adjusting this in a map you might be showing in the future. So, all right, so we have our cut unit here. We're going to go in and we're going to create our buffer around our stream. So in order to do that, let's close this create features window, because we don't need that anymore. We want to go up here and we want to go to our Arc Toolbox. If Arc Toolbox isn't open already, you can click on it up here and that will open it. And then you want to go down to Analysis Tools, and you want to go to Proximity, and you want to choose Buffer. In here, your input feature is going to be your stream. You want to change this name. You want to call it Stream Buffers. And then you want to pick your units that you're going to create your buffer around. So we're going to go with 150 feet on each side of the stream. And then our dissolve down here, we want to click all. And so once you've done that, you'll go down here and you'll click. So we click all. You go down here and you click OK. Once it's done calculating, you're going to end up with a shapefile that looks like this. If you were doing this before and you didn't click all on your dissolve, you're going to have something where you have every time you had a new segment of stream, you have an end to your buffers, which is fine for what we're doing right now. That doesn't really affect anything other than the overall looks of things. So in this case, since I chose dissolve all, it took all of those individual segments and turned it all into one big segment. So this is our stream buffer. This is what we're going to erase from our cut unit. But let's get a different look at it here. Let's go in. We'll make it hollow and make it blue, since it's a stream buffer. And that will allow us to get a little bit better look at exactly what we're going to be clipping out. So you can see here that within our harvest unit, we have these parts of our harvest unit are inside that stream buffer. So we wouldn't be able to cut trees inside that stream buffer, right? So to get our accurate acreage for our harvest unit, we want to erase the part of the harvest unit that now is inside that stream buffer. So to do that, we go over here. We don't go to proximity anymore. We go to overlay. And we choose this tool right here called erase. And you can see here on the side of the tools, there is a little preview of exactly what the tool does. So it shows you what each one of these is, and it shows you how, what your end result will look like. Also, once you've clicked inside of here, it gives you a little text version of what that tool is. If this isn't showing up, you'll want to click over here. It should say show help, and that will open up this help feature. I normally keep it open just to make sure I'm always using the right tool. So our input feature is going to be our harvest units. Our erase feature, the clip part of it, is going to be our stream buffer. And then we want to call this our harvest unit minus stream buffer. It's a little bit of a long name, and you might want to abbreviate it. Just keep in mind that when you're abbreviating things, make it meaningful. You might have to actually do a key or a list that shows what all those abbreviations mean. Database management is a big part of ArcGIS. You don't want to just a whole bunch of folders spread out through your computer with all these different files on them that you don't know what they are. So meaningful names are sometimes very nice and helpful. You need to be careful with the length of your name. Sometimes Arc doesn't like longer names. So we'll click save. And we've got that. We don't need to worry about any of the XY tolerance here. So we say OK. And it's going to think down here, and you can see it's thinking, it's doing its thing. It might take a minute or so, a few seconds. All right, so here we go. Now we get this new unit here in beige that is our harvest unit minus our stream buffer. So we can show this slightly different. We can double click up here. Let's make it hollow. And let's give it a color like that. All right. So you can see here that this orange is where we're actually going to be able to cut trees. And you can change your stack on here to change how everything's located, and you can turn things off. Now this is where we're going to get into some of the map design aspects of this, because in this, before we go on to that, just real quick, we want to right click on to your harvest unit minus the buffers to go into your attributes table. You need to go to your area, and you need to calculate your geometry again. It doesn't automatically do that when you do a cut. So remember, anytime you do any sort of these overlay tools or extract tools or things like that, you want to make sure you go back in and recalculate your geometries again. All right, so now you can see that we went from 75 acres to 71 acres. So we lost 4 acres there that we aren't going to be able to cut. And you can see where that would have occurred. So now in your map design, this is part that I'm going to leave up to you guys. You want to take into consideration who your audience might be. What you're trying to show. Is this for a forester who has a good understanding of what's going on? Is it for a general public? Is it a meeting where you're meeting with some regulatory people? Or are you potentially looking at, hey, this is what the buffer distance used to be, and now they're increasing it from 100 feet to 150 feet, and this is the new buffer, and what our acreage of trees is going to be after that new buffer is put in place. All kinds of things like that you might be looking at. So when you're building these maps, keep that in mind. Also, when you're adding in your information, things like legends and text information and things along those lines, that's also something you can consider as who your audience is. A bit of a hint for your title here. This is the West Fork Millicoma, like I said, and this is a cut unit. So you can use that to kind of come up with a title that actually shows, that is descriptive of what this map is showing. Um, Once again, we only have one unit here, so you don't have to do min, max, mean, because you only have one unit. It's all going to be the same number. So, you could do pre buffer harvest unit, post buffer harvest unit. You could just have, uh, your stream buffers and your original harvest unit turned off and just show your post buffer harvest unit. And this could be like, this is what we're going to be able to cut. You don't even put in the buffer, or you could have the buffer included, all kinds of things like that. So that's part of this is definitely an artistic thought process, but a big part of this is you need to be able to display the information in a way that your audience can understand it, and who your audience is sometimes will dictate that. So just keep that in mind when you're making these maps. And in this case, I'm leaving that up to you. You can be a little creative in this. Exactly like how I was drawing my outside of my harvest unit here. Your guys's values might not be the same as mine as far as total acreage. You might have also done it in square feet or something along those lines too. So none of those things are going to get you points counted off. I just want you to think about, when you're making these maps, what information you're trying to show and who you're showing it to. And a good example of that is, say, like a roadside kiosk. That map a lot of times is going to be designed in a way that you don't even need to have a native language speaker looking at, they're going to be able to look at that map and know what that map is showing without being able to speak whatever the language of the country that they're in is in. So things like that are really important when you're trying to display your maps. So go ahead, pick your colors, how you like your colors. Some colors are pretty standard. Your river system colors, your existing road colors. These are all kind of a standardized color scheme. Just keep that in mind. But when you're doing things like harvest unit colors, pick them appropriately. You don't want stuff to clash too much. Bright green and orange is kind of clashing. And that I picked them because it was a bright color so that you guys could see what I was talking about, but it might not be the color I would choose for my M map. Another thing you want to look at is, in this case, see, we're zoomed in to a certain extent where our scale bar here is actually showing 0.7 miles, which is not extremely meaningful to the average person. So keep that in mind too, so that you might want to, zoom in a little bit more or adjust the overall length of your scale bar. We might need to zoom in once more here. So now we're at 0.5 miles and a quarter of a mile. Or you want to maybe zoom out so you're at a mile. We'll do 2 fixed zoom out so that we're at mile, half mile, quarter mile. Things along those lines. And we're 0.9 here. You can actually take this now and stretch it a little bit. There you go. Now you're at a mile. Stuff like that when you're building your map is important to consider. Don't just go with whatever the default scale bar drops up there. You want to think about reading that map and being like, all right, I have no idea how long 0.69 miles is, but I have a pretty decent idea in my mind of how long half a mile is, or a full mile is, or a kilometer, or half a kilometer, things along those lines, or 50 miles or 100 miles. Instead of breaking it at really odd intervals, you want to try to make it so it breaks at something that's meaningful. It also needs to be meaningful for what your map is showing. So with that in mind, have fun making your maps. And there's not really a right or wrong answer to this one. It just needs to show the information. So, have fun with that. And I will talk to you guys soon.